The night sky holds stories far older than history itself. We are about to journey across 30 of the most astonishing legends of the divine cosmos, tales woven into the fabric of ancient star maps and whispered in forgotten texts. By the end, you will see the heavens not as a silent void, but as humanity's oldest and most profound storybook. What if a single, perfect egg contained the seed of all creation? Could entire continents of advanced beings truly vanish beneath the waves? What ancient secret connects a dancing god to the very pulse of the universe? These are not just myths, but echoes of a time when the boundary between earth and sky was thin. What part of this cosmic mystery calls out to you most? Our journey begins at the very beginning, with the first legend. It is a story told by countless cultures, separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, yet they all whisper of the same profound origin. Before time, before space, before anything we could call a universe, there existed a state of perfect potential. And across the ancient world, humanity described that state with a simple, profound symbol, an egg. In the mystical Orphic traditions of ancient Greece, the cosmos began with a silver shimmering egg, laid by the primordial deity Kronos, time itself, in the boundless dark. From this egg emerged Phanes, the first god of light and creation. On the other side of the world, in the sacred texts of Hindu cosmology, we find the Hiranyagarbha, the golden womb. This is not merely an egg, but a radiant, cosmic womb of gold floating in the void of nothingness, containing within it the seed of all existence. The ancient Egyptians spoke of the mound that rose from the waters of chaos, an image deeply connected to the idea of a cosmic egg emerging from a formless sea. Even in Chinese mythology, the giant Pan-gu is born from a cosmic egg, his body forming the heavens and the earth as he grows. The symbol is universal. An egg is a closed, self-contained universe. It holds life in its most concentrated, latent form. It requires no outside influence, only the right conditions, to unleash everything it contains. It is the ultimate vessel of transformation, hiding immense complexity within a shell of perfect simplicity. Now, consider this. For centuries, these stories were seen as beautiful, poetic metaphors. Then, in the 20th century, science proposed a theory of cosmic origins that sounds, in its essence, remarkably familiar. The Big Bang Theory suggests our entire observable universe expanded from an initial state of extreme density and temperature, a single point of infinite potential. Cosmologists sometimes call the moment before this expansion a singularity. And what is a singularity? It is a state where all the matter and energy of the cosmos is contained in a point of zero volume, where the laws of physics as we know them break down. It is, in a very real scientific sense, a state of pure, undifferentiated potential. The parallels are haunting. The cosmic egg of ancient legend and the primordial singularity of modern cosmology both describe a universe born from a single, perfect, and profoundly mysterious source. One uses the language of myth and symbol, the other the language of mathematics and physics, but they point toward the same awe-inspiring mystery. How is it that our oldest stories seem to hold a mirror to our newest discoveries? It is as if the human mind, in its deepest contemplation of origin, instinctively grasped a fundamental truth about the nature of existence, long before telescopes or particle accelerators could provide the proof. This is the power of our first legend. It reminds us that our quest to understand where we come from is not a new one. It is the oldest story we have ever told, and it begins, always, with a single point of light in the dark. That single point of light did not simply explode into chaos. It grew into a structure, a cosmos with order and connection. And if the first legend gave us the seed of creation, the second gives us its breathtaking architecture. Nearly every ancient culture, from the frozen north to the steamy jungles, shared a profound vision of the universe. They did not see a random scattering of stars, but a magnificent, living structure at the very center of everything. They saw a great tree, or a towering pillar, or a sacred mountain. This was the axis mundi, the world axis, and it connected all realms of existence into one coherent whole. In the cold, mythic landscapes of the Norse, this was Yggdrasil, the immense and eternal ash tree. Its roots plunged deep into 3 separate wells, tapping into the waters of fate, wisdom, and the primordial past. Its massive trunk rose through the realm of humans, Midgard, and its vast, sheltering branches stretched high into the heavens, holding the homes of the gods themselves. Squirrels ran messages up and down its bark, an eagle sat at its crown, and a great serpent gnawed at its roots. Yggdrasil was not just a tree, it was the entire ecosystem of the cosmos, alive and humming with activity. Far to the east, in the ancient Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, we find the Hulipu tree, often linked to the cosmic Kishkanu. This sacred tree was planted by the gods on the banks of the Euphrates, its roots reaching the underworld and its crown brushing the sky. It was a prize, a source of immense power, and its wood was used to create the throne and bed of the goddess Inanna. Here, the tree is not just a connector, but a source of divine authority and kingship. Across the shamanic traditions of Siberia, the world tree is the central ladder of reality. A shaman, in a trance state, would spiritually climb this tree. Its roots were the underworld, where he might journey to retrieve a lost soul or commune with ancestors. Its trunk was the middle world of the living, and its highest branches were the upper world, the realm of celestial spirits and powerful deities. This was not metaphor to them, it was a literal map for spiritual travel, a conduit between worlds that only the initiated could navigate. So what does this universal symbol truly represent? It is an ancient model of a layered, interconnected universe. The roots tap into the cosmic waters, the source of all life and memory, the underworld of the past and the unconscious. The solid trunk is the tangible, everyday world we inhabit, and the branches, holding the sun, moon, and stars, are the higher realms of spirit, destiny, and the gods. The axis mundi is the ultimate connector. It explains how divine influence flows down to earth, how human prayers might ascend to the heavens, and how the soul journeys after death. It places humanity not on a random planet in a cold void, but at the very crossroads of creation, at the base of a structure that holds everything together. This legend reveals a deep human need to find the center, to believe our world is anchored to something greater. We no longer speak of a physical world tree, but the concept never truly left us. We build towering skyscrapers that pierce the clouds, we create worldwide digital networks that connect every continent in an instant, and we still look to the North Star, the fixed point in the sky around which the heavens seem to turn. We are still searching for our axis, for that central pillar that makes sense of the vast and often bewildering cosmos. Yet this cosmic pillar was not a static monument. It was a highway, a channel for movement between the realms, and if the gods or their messengers needed to travel, they did not walk, they flew. Across the ancient world, from the banks of the Indus River to the deserts of the Near East, stories emerge of astonishing vehicles that traverse the sky, piloted by beings of immense power. These are not vague mentions of flight, but often shockingly detailed accounts of celestial chariots. Perhaps the most intricate descriptions come from ancient India, recorded in Sanskrit epics like the Mahabharata, and texts such as the Samarangana Sutradhara. Here, they are called vimanas. These were far more than simple chariots with wings. The texts describe them as multi-storied structures, sometimes circular, sometimes cylindrical, built from specific, lightweight metals. They are said to have contained intricate machinery, with roaring engines that used mercury or other mysterious substances for propulsion. Some accounts even detail their weaponry, speaking of devices that could project beams of light capable of reducing entire cities to ash. The level of mechanical and aerodynamic detail is startling, reading less like a myth and more like a technical manual lost to time. Now, shift your gaze westward, to the 6th century before the Common Era. The prophet Ezekiel, exiled in Babylon, has a vision that has baffled scholars for millennia. He describes a great whirlwind from the north, with flashing fire and brilliant light. At its center, he sees 4 living creatures, and beside each creature, a wheel. But these are no ordinary wheels. Ezekiel struggles to describe them, calling them a wheel intersecting a wheel, with rims full of eyes all around. Wherever the spirit went, the wheels went, rising from the earth with a sound like great waters, like the voice of the Almighty. For centuries, this was interpreted as pure mystical symbolism. Yet when read with a different lens, the description takes on a new character. The complex gyroscopic movement, the brilliant luminosity, the association with a thunderous roar and independent movement, it all sounds eerily reminiscent of a sophisticated aerial vehicle. One so far beyond Ezekiel's experience that he could only describe it in the terms he knew: wheels and living creatures. Even the familiar pantheon of Greek mythology had its flyers. Helios, the sun god, drove his fiery chariot across the sky each day. Apollo was associated with a chariot of light. While these seem more poetic, they continue the persistent theme: a divine being using a specialized vehicle to traverse the celestial realm. So what are we to make of this pattern? Were the Vimanas, Ezekiel's wheel, and the chariots of the gods merely powerful metaphors for spiritual ascension or celestial bodies? Or do they hint at something more tangible? Could these widespread, detailed legends be a form of ancestral memory, a fragmented record of advanced aerial technology witnessed by ancient peoples? The idea is provocative. If a culture with no concept of aircraft witnessed a sophisticated flying machine, how would they describe it? They might speak of a shining chariot that roars like a storm, piloted by beings who seemed like gods. They might remember its intricate parts as wheels within wheels, or record its construction in the only terms they had, comparing it to the most advanced vehicles they knew. This legend does not demand a conclusion, but it invites a profound question. It asks us to listen to these ancient stories not as childish fantasies, but as potential reports, filtered through the worldview of their time. The sheer consistency of the theme, across cultures that had no contact with each other, suggests it touches on a deep and universal human experience, one that still captures our imagination today as we send our own metal chariots to explore the heavens. These celestial chariots raise a question that has echoed from the pyramids to the jungles. If gods or other beings visited from the sky, what did they leave behind? The fourth legend is perhaps the most controversial of all, a modern idea built on ancient foundations. It proposes that our planet was visited in the deep past by extraterrestrial beings, and that these visitors, these star people, fundamentally shaped the course of human history. This is the legend of the ancient astronauts. Its foundation often begins with one of the oldest recorded civilizations, Sumer. From the clay tablets of Mesopotamia comes a strange and compelling account of a being named Ons. Described as an Apkallu, or sage, Ons was not human. Ancient texts describe him as a composite creature, part fish and part man, who emerged from the Erythraean Sea. According to the Babylonian priest Berossus, this being spent his days among the people, teaching them everything: the building of cities, the foundations of law, the principles of agriculture, mathematics, and writing. Then, at sunset, he would return to the waters. The story presents Ons not as a god to be worshipped, but as an instructor, a civilizing force who delivered knowledge in a sudden, profound package. To ancient astronaut theorists, Ons is not a mythical monster, but a potential description of a visitor in an elaborate suit, perhaps an environmental suit for a being not of this world, imparting advanced knowledge to a primitive humanity. The argument leaps forward thousands of years and across continents to a remote tribe in Mali, West Africa, known as the Dogon. In the 1930s, French anthropologists recorded the Dogon's intricate cosmology. Astonishingly, their oral traditions spoke of a small, dense, and incredibly heavy companion star to Sirius, the brightest star in our sky. They called this star Po-Tolo, and they knew it orbited Sirius in an elliptical path over a period of 50 years. The problem, the white dwarf star Sirius B, which fits this exact description, was only confirmed by Western astronomers using powerful telescopes in the 19th century. Its immense density and elliptical orbit were detailed even later. How could an isolated tribe, with no apparent astronomical instruments, possess such precise knowledge about a star invisible to the naked eye? Proponents of the ancient astronaut theory suggest this information was given to the Dogon by visitors from the Sirius system itself, a story preserved in their rituals and mythology for generations. The supposed evidence extends to physical sites that defy simple explanation. In the high plains of Peru, the Nazca lines stretch across hundreds of square miles. These are not simple drawings, but massive geoglyphs, enormous figures of birds, spiders, monkeys, and geometric shapes, so large they can only be fully appreciated from high above the desert floor. Mainstream archaeology explains them as ritual pathways related to water and fertility, meant for deities in the sky to see. The ancient astronaut perspective asks a more direct question. What if they were meant as markers or landing signals for those very deities, who were, in fact, pilots of aerial vehicles? Similarly, at Pumapunku in Bolivia, we find stonework that staggers the mind. Enormous blocks of andesite stone, some weighing over 100 tons, are cut with laser-like precision, featuring complex interlocking channels, drill holes, and edges so sharp they seem machined. The conventional view attributes this to the incredible skill and patience of the Tiwanaku culture. The alternative theory looks at the perfection of the cuts and the sheer scale of the stones and wonders, if such work required tools or knowledge beyond what we traditionally attribute to ancient peoples. The debate between these viewpoints is fierce and deeply ideological. Mainstream archaeologists and historians argue that the ancient astronaut theory is a form of modern myth-making that strips ancient cultures of their own genius and ingenuity. They offer alternative explanations for each piece of evidence. The Dogon knowledge of Sirius B, they point out, could have come from contact with European missionaries or travelers in the late 19th or early 20th century, who then saw that knowledge integrated into existing Dogon myths. The Nazca lines they demonstrate could have been designed and laid out using simple surveying techniques from ground level. The stonework at Pumapunku, while astonishing, is a testament to generations of master craftsmen working with stone tools, sand, and water, achieving perfection through relentless effort. So where does the truth lie? This legend is less about proving a historical fact and more about exploring a profound human tension. On one side is a deep respect for the boundless capability of our ancestors. On the other is a haunting suspicion that our story might be part of something infinitely larger, that we might have had teachers from the stars. The evidence is ambiguous, a Rorschach test for how we view our own past. Do we see the fingerprints of gods, or the magnificent, untarnished fingerprints of humanity? The answer you lean toward says as much about you as it does about the mysteries of antiquity. The debate over our origins, whether earthly or celestial, leads us to a legend that embodies the ultimate fall from grace, a story of a paradise not just lost, but drowned. This is the tale of a civilization that reached the pinnacle of human achievement, only to be erased from the map by the sea. We know it as Atlantis. But to understand its true power, we must return to the source, to the philosopher Plato in ancient Athens, around 360 years before the Common Era. He did not present Atlantis as a myth, but as a historical account passed down through generations. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, Plato gives us our only detailed portrait of this fabled land. He describes it as a great island, larger than Libya and Asia combined, located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. Its heart was a magnificent capital city, built in a series of concentric rings of land and water, connected by great canals and bridges. At its center stood a hill, and upon that hill, a temple to the sea god Poseidon, clad in silver and gold. The people of Atlantis, descended from Poseidon himself, were said to possess technology and knowledge far beyond their time. They built vast harbors, heated their baths with natural hot springs, and constructed a complex irrigation system for their plains. They were rich in precious metals, particularly orichalcum, a mysterious metal that shone like fire. But Plato's story is not one of simple admiration. It is a moral parable. As the Atlanteans grew in power and wealth, their divine nature became diluted with mortal greed. They became arrogant and militaristic, launching a campaign to conquer the entire Mediterranean world. It was only the city-state of Athens, Plato's own ideal republic in action, that stood against them and turned the tide. And then, as punishment for their hubris, the gods sent violent earthquakes and floods. In a single day and night of misfortune, the entire island of Atlantis was swallowed by the sea and vanished. Plato's account is strikingly specific, yet it leaves the exact location a haunting mystery. This has fueled a search that has lasted for over 2 millennia. One of the most compelling theories points to the volcanic island of Thura, now known as Santorini. Around the year 1600 before the Common Era, a cataclysmic eruption, one of the largest in human history, devastated the advanced Minoan civilization centered on nearby Crete. The explosion caused tsunamis that would have ravaged coastal cities across the region. Could the memory of this real-world disaster, passed down through Egyptian priests as Plato claimed, have formed the core of the Atlantis story? The timeline and the scale of destruction certainly fit the legend's catastrophic end. Other seekers look to the Richat structure in Mauritania, often called the Eye of the Sahara. From above, this geological formation is a stunning series of concentric rings in the desert, eerily mirroring Plato's description of the capital city. Proponents argue that shifts in climate over thousands of years could have turned a once fertile region into a desert, a different kind of drowning under sand instead of water. Theories have placed Atlantis everywhere, from the Bahamas to Antarctica, from the Azores to Indonesia. Each location offers a piece of the puzzle, a geological feature or an archaeological anomaly that seems to whisper, "Look here." But perhaps the enduring power of Atlantis lies less in its geography and more in its symbolism. It represents humanity's deepest fear and most poignant hope. The fear is that our greatest achievements are fragile, that pride can lead to a fall of cosmic proportions. The hope is that somewhere, buried beneath the waves or the sands, lies proof of a golden age, a time when we were wiser, more connected, and more advanced than we are today. Atlantis is the ultimate ghost of a civilization, a mirror in which every generation sees its own anxieties about progress and punishment, and its own longing for a forgotten paradise. It asks us, what would we do with such power, and what remains of us when it is gone? Atlantis sank beneath a wrathful sea, but it was not the only civilization said to be washed away. From the depths of that universal fear emerges the sixth legend, a story so pervasive it forms a cornerstone of human memory. It is the legend of the Great Flood, a divine deluge meant to cleanse the world and reset humanity. And while many know the tale of Noah and his ark, its roots are far older, found etched on crumbling clay tablets from a time before the Bible was written. To understand the flood, we must first journey to ancient Mesopotamia and the Epic of Gilgamesh. In this story, the hero Gilgamesh, seeking the secret of eternal life, seeks out the immortal sage Utnapishtim. Utnapishtim then recounts a hauntingly familiar story. The gods, angered by the noise of humanity, decide to send a great flood to destroy them all. But one god, E, takes pity and warns Utnapishtim in a dream, instructing him to build a great boat, to take aboard his family and the seed of all living creatures. Utnapishtim builds a massive, cube-shaped vessel, seals it with pitch, and loads his wealth and the animals. The storm rages for 6 days and 6 nights, terrifying even the gods themselves. When the waters finally recede, Utnapishtim's ark comes to rest on a mountain. He sends out a dove, then a swallow, and finally a raven, which does not return, signaling dry land. For his obedience, the gods grant Utnapishtim and his wife immortality. Now, listen to the story from the book of Genesis. God, seeing the wickedness of man, decides to blot them out with a flood. But Noah finds favor. God instructs him to build an ark of gopher wood, sealed with pitch, with specific dimensions. He is to bring his family and 2 of every kind of animal. The floodgates of heaven open, and rain falls for 40 days and 40 nights. The ark floats on the waters, which cover the highest mountains. After the rains stop, Noah sends out a raven, then a dove 3 times. When the dove finally brings back an olive leaf, he knows the waters have receded, and the ark settles on the mountains of Ararat. The parallels are undeniable. A divine decision to reset humanity, a single righteous man given a warning and precise building instructions, a massive boat, sealed with pitch, carrying family and animals. A catastrophic, world-covering deluge, the sending out of birds to find land, a covenant made afterward. The stories are mirrors of each other, separated by centuries and cultures. But the flood legend does not belong only to the Middle East. It is a global echo. The Maya Popol Vuh tells of a great flood sent by the gods to destroy the wooden people, a failed early creation. Aboriginal Australian Dreamtime stories speak of a time when the sea rose and covered the land, with ancestors fleeing to high ground. In Chinese mythology, the great engineer Yu is celebrated for taming a catastrophic, generation-long flood that threatened all of civilization, channeling the waters to the sea. This pattern is too consistent to be coincidence, so what could have inspired such a universal memory? Geology may hold a key. At the end of the last ice age, roughly 12,000 years ago, the world underwent dramatic climatic shifts. Vast ice sheets melted, causing global sea levels to rise by hundreds of feet over centuries. But this was not always a gentle process. There is compelling evidence for catastrophic regional flooding events. One major theory points to the possible breaching of a natural dam holding back the massive glacial Lake Agassiz in North America, which could have unleashed a freshwater deluge into the oceans, disrupting climate patterns worldwide. Another points to the flooding of the Black Sea basin around 7,600 years ago, when rising Mediterranean waters burst through the Bosporus, possibly turning a freshwater lake into a saltwater sea within a matter of months or years, inundating vast coastal settlements. For the people living through these events, it would have been apocalyptic. The waters rose, swallowing familiar lands, drowning entire communities. The world as they knew it literally vanished beneath the waves. Survivors would have fled to high ground, carrying with them the traumatic story of the Great Drowning. Over generations, as the story was passed down, the natural disaster became intertwined with the spiritual, an explanation for why the gods would unleash such fury. The flood became a divine punishment and a test, a cleansing fire made of water. The legend of the Great Flood, therefore, sits at the powerful intersection of collective trauma and moral instruction. It is both a possible memory of real, earth-shattering events experienced by our ancestors and a profound archetype about renewal. The Ark is not just a boat, it is a vessel of hope, carrying the fragile seed of a new world through the chaos of the old. Every culture that tells this story is remembering a time when everything was lost, and yet, somehow, a few were saved to begin again. It is the ultimate legend of resilience, written in water and whispered on the wind. Floods cleanse the world, but fire promises something more radical, a complete rebirth from the ashes. This brings us to the legend of the phoenix, a creature whose very existence is a testament to the cosmos's most fundamental rhythm. The phoenix is no ordinary bird. It is a being of dazzling splendor, often described with feathers of crimson, gold, and purple, shining with the light of the sun itself. Its life cycle is its defining mystery. After living for 500 or sometimes 1,000 years, the phoenix senses its end approaching. It builds a nest of aromatic spices like cinnamon and myrrh, and then, as the sun reaches its zenith, the bird ignites. It is consumed in a glorious, self-created pyre, but from those very ashes, a new, young phoenix emerges, ready to begin the cycle anew. This story did not spring from one culture alone. Its earliest known ancestor is the Egyptian Bennu, a heron-like bird linked to the sun god Ra and the annual flooding of the Nile, which brought fertile renewal to the land. The Bennu was seen as the soul of Ra and a symbol of resurrection. The Greeks later adopted and transformed this concept into the phoenix we know, a word that itself may mean crimson. Persian mythology celebrated the simurgh, another great mythical bird associated with purification and the cycling of ages. The phoenix is more than a magical animal. It is a walking, flying metaphor for a concept that terrified and comforted ancient thinkers, the idea that time itself is circular, not a straight line. Many cultures looked at the cosmos and saw not a one-time creation moving toward an end, but an endless loop of birth, death, and glorious rebirth. In Hindu cosmology, this is expressed through the concept of yugas, vast cycles of time that repeat like the seasons of a universe. We are said to be living in the Kali Yuga, an age of discord and spiritual decline. But this dark age is not permanent. It will be followed by a new Satya Yuga, a golden age of truth and harmony, before the cycle begins its downward turn once more. Each full cycle of 4 yugas lasts for millions of years, and these cycles themselves repeat within even greater cosmic time frames. Similarly, the Aztecs and other Mesoamerican peoples believed in the legend of the 5 suns. They held that our current world is the fifth creation, preceded by four previous worlds, or suns, each destroyed by a different elemental catastrophe: water, jaguars, fire, and wind. Each destruction made way for a new creation, a new sun, and a new humanity. We live under the fifth sun, which, the legends warned, would one day be destroyed by earthquakes. This worldview saw history not as progress, but as a series of epochs, each with its own character and its own inevitable end. So why did so many ancient minds gravitate toward this cyclical model? Observe the natural world. The sun dies every evening in the west and is reborn every morning in the east. The moon waxes and wanes in a perfect, predictable loop. Seasons turn, plants die in winter only to sprout again in spring. Human life follows the same pattern, generations passing to make way for new ones. It is a logical, even beautiful, extrapolation to think the entire universe operates on the same principle. The phoenix, then, becomes the perfect symbol for this cosmic truth. Its fiery death is not a tragedy, but a necessary transformation. The ashes are not an end, but the fertile ground for a new beginning. This legend offered profound comfort. It suggested that decay and destruction are not meaningless, but part of a grand, eternal design. Even the stars in their courses, and the gods themselves, might be subject to this great wheel of time. It asks us a humbling question: if the universe itself is caught in a cycle of rebirth, what does that mean for our own fleeting stories within it? Cycles of cosmic rebirth offer a promise of renewal, but they also hint at a turbulent past, a time when the very structure of heaven was forged in conflict. This brings us to a darker, more dramatic type of legend, the celestial war. These are not battles between mortals, but cataclysmic struggles among the gods themselves, conflicts that often shape the universe we inhabit. One of the most influential of these stories is the Christian narrative of Lucifer's fall. Lucifer, whose name means light bringer, was not created evil. He is described as the most beautiful and powerful of angels, a being of pure intellect and will, but pride corrupted that perfection. The legend tells that Lucifer, in his arrogance, desired to be equal to God, rallying a third of the heavenly host to his banner. A great war erupted in heaven, with the archangel Michael leading the loyal angels against the rebels. Lucifer and his followers were cast out, falling from grace like lightning from the sky. They became demons, and their new domain was hell. This story is profound because it moves the origin of evil from the human heart to the celestial realm. Evil, in this view, is not a primal force but a corruption of something originally good, a rebellion against divine order that echoes through all creation. It establishes a cosmic hierarchy, a clear line between the loyal and the fallen, that frames humanity's own moral struggles as a reflection of that first, heavenly schism. A very different kind of divine war unfolds in Norse mythology, but with a similar theme of establishing order. This is the conflict between the two tribes of gods, the Aesir and the Vanir. The Aesir, including Odin and Thor, were gods of war, power, and sovereignty. The Vanir, like Njord and Freyr, were deities of fertility, wealth, and nature's magic. Their war began with an act of deception and escalated into a brutal, stalemated conflict. What is fascinating is how it ended. Exhausted by battle, the two sides agreed to a truce and exchanged hostages. The Vanir sent the wise Njord and his children to live among the Aesir, and the Aesir sent Honir and Mimir to the Vanir. This exchange was not a total victory for one side, but a fusion. The Vanir were incorporated into the Aesir's pantheon, blending the powers of sovereignty and fertility into a new, more complete divine order. This war was not about good versus evil, but about the necessary integration of different cosmic principles, a messy, violent process that ultimately created a stronger, more balanced pantheon to rule the 9 worlds. Perhaps the most visually staggering of these cosmic wars is found in the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish. Here, the universe begins with 2 primordial beings, the sweetwater god Apsu and the saltwater goddess Tiamat, who represents the chaotic, undifferentiated sea. From their union, generations of younger gods are born, but these new gods are noisy and disruptive, disturbing the primal quiet. Apsu decides to destroy them, but the clever god slays Apsu first. This enraged Tiamat, who transforms into a monstrous, draconic embodiment of chaos. She creates an army of terrifying creatures and appoints her second consort, Kingu, as its commander. The younger gods are terrified until the mighty Marduk, god of storms, steps forward. He agrees to face Tiamat on one condition, that if he succeeds, he will be granted supreme kingship over all the gods. They agree. The battle is epic. Marduk rides his storm chariot, armed with winds, a net, and his invincible weapon. He confronts the roaring Tiamat, drives the winds into her gaping maw so she cannot close it, and shoots an arrow that splits her heart, killing her. He then stands upon her massive corpse and does something extraordinary. He does not simply discard it. He uses her body as the raw material for creation itself. He splits her carcass like a shellfish, raising half to form the vault of the heavens and leaving the other half to become the earth. From her eyes, he makes the sources of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Her spittle becomes clouds, and her ribs become the mountains. Kingu is executed, and from his blood, mixed with clay, Marduk creates humanity to serve the gods. This is the ultimate war of order versus chaos. The physical world we stand on is literally the carved-up body of the defeated chaos monster. Our very existence is a product of that victory. The legend explains not just where evil or conflict came from, but where matter itself originated. The cosmos is not a peaceful creation, but a constructed one, built from the remains of a titanic struggle. These wars in heaven, from the fall of angels to the slaughter of a dragon, share a deep, unifying purpose. They are foundational myths. They explain how a stable, structured universe emerged from potential chaos. They establish why there is struggle and suffering, by rooting it in a primordial fracture or battle. And most powerfully, they often directly link the outcome of that divine conflict to the world we know. We walk on the earth that was Tiamat's flesh. We live in the moral universe shaped by Lucifer's rebellion. We experience the seasons and harvests governed by gods who once warred with each other. These legends tell us that our reality is the aftermath, the settled dust of a conflict so vast it shaped the stars. They force us to ask, if the cosmos was born from such violence, what does that say about the nature of existence itself? And what role are we, humanity, meant to play in this ordered, yet contested, creation? Order emerges from the chaos of divine war, but that chaos is never truly vanquished. It coils at the edges of creation, a constant, necessary presence in the cosmic balance. This brings us to one of the most potent and paradoxical symbols found across the globe, the cosmic serpent. More than a simple monster, the serpent or dragon represents the untamed, primal energy of the universe itself, a force that is both terrifying and essential. Our first encounter is with a being we have already met, but now seen in her full, serpentine glory. In the Babylonian Enuma Elish, Tiamat is not merely a saltwater goddess, she is the mother of all dragons. When she transforms to wage war against the younger gods, she becomes a monstrous, coiling serpent of the sea, a creature of scales and venom, embodying the formless, threatening chaos that existed before the world was made. Her defeat by Marduk is the ultimate triumph of order, yet her body becomes the very substance of that order. The serpent is not erased, she is transformed, her chaotic essence now structuring the heavens and the earth. Here, the serpent is the raw material of reality. Journey to the banks of the Nile, and you will find a different kind of serpentine struggle, one that repeats every single night. This is Apep, also known as Apophis, the giant serpent god of chaos and darkness. Apep's sole purpose is to stop the sun god Ra on his nightly journey through the underworld. Each evening, as Ra's solar bark enters the realm of the dead, Apep attacks. He is the embodiment of entropy, the force that seeks to unravel Ma'at, the sacred order of the universe. The battle is fierce and eternal. Ra, often aided by other gods like Set, must fend off the serpent's coils. Sometimes Apep is speared, sometimes bound, sometimes cast into the depths. But he is never destroyed. He always returns the next night, forcing Ra to fight again. This is a crucial distinction. Apep is not an enemy to be permanently eliminated. He is a necessary opponent, a constant test that proves and reaffirms the sun god's power and the resilience of cosmic order. Without the nightly battle, the sun might grow complacent, the order might become stagnant. The serpent, in its relentless hostility, keeps the cycle of day and night, of life and death, in motion. Now, shift the scene to the serene waters of the cosmic ocean in Hindu mythology. Here, we find Anantashesha, whose name means the endless remainder. This is a serpent of a completely different nature. Anantashesha is a being of infinite proportions, with 1,000 heads that form a majestic canopy. He floats upon the primordial waters, and upon his massive coils rests the god Vishnu, the preserver of the universe, in a state of dreamlike meditation between cosmic cycles. Anantashesha is not chaos, but stability. He is the foundation upon which the preserver god rests, the endless support that holds up the divine. He represents the eternal, cyclical nature of time itself. When one universe ends, Vishnu awakens, and a new universe is born from a lotus that springs from his navel, all while still resting upon the serpent's endless form. Here, the serpent is not the enemy of order, but its essential bedrock, the infinite loop upon which all finite realities are strung. This idea of the eternal cycle finds its purest symbol in the Ouroboros, the serpent devouring its own tail. This ancient image appears in Egyptian, Gnostic, and alchemical traditions. It is a perfect circle of self-consumption and self-generation. The serpent eats its tail, destroying itself, yet from that act of destruction comes the energy of its own continued existence. It is a closed system with no beginning and no end, a visual representation of infinity, of the cyclical nature of the cosmos where death feeds life, and endings are merely disguised beginnings. The Ouroboros tells us that creation and destruction are not opposites, but 2 points on the same, unbroken circle. So what do we make of this dual nature? The cosmic serpent is the great paradox. It is Tiamat, the chaos that must be defeated to create the world. It is Apep, the eternal enemy whose attacks ensure the sun's daily rebirth. It is Anantashesha, the infinite foundation for divine preservation, and it is the Ouroboros, the symbol of eternity eating itself. The serpent embodies the life force in its most raw and untamed state, the churning energy that can both destroy civilizations and fuel the growth of forests. It is the necessary shadow, the perpetual motion at the heart of stillness, the reminder that for anything to live, something else must be consumed, and that from every ending, a new coil begins to form. The serpent does not ask to be loved, only to be acknowledged as the timeless, twisting thread woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. The serpent's timeless coil leads our gaze upward, to points of light that have served as humanity's most faithful clocks and compasses. Among these, 2 star systems shine with particular brilliance in our collective mythology, not just as celestial objects, but as living characters in our oldest stories. The first is a delicate cluster known as the Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters. In Greek myth, they are the daughters of the Titan Atlas, transformed into stars to escape the relentless pursuit of the hunter Orion, who still chases them across the winter sky. But their story is not confined to the Mediterranean. On the other side of the world, in the Aboriginal Australian Dreamtime, the Pleiades are also a group of women, the Yungarmurra Water Girls. They are seen as ancestral beings who brought the first rains and the secret of sacred ceremonies, their movement across the heavens signaling the change of seasons and the time for important gatherings. This practical connection is what makes the Pleiades truly universal. For the ancient Greeks, their heliacal rising, their first appearance in the dawn sky, marked the beginning of the sailing season. For the Maori of New Zealand, it signaled the start of the new year. For farmers in Japan and across Mesoamerica, its position told them when to plant and when to harvest. This tiny, shimmering cluster was a global calendar in the sky, a celestial meeting point where myth and survival were intimately intertwined. Yet if the Pleiades were the practical timekeepers, the brightest star in our night sky, Sirius, was often seen as something more divine, a bringer of both life and profound mystery. In ancient Egypt, Sirius was Sopdet, personified as the goddess Isis. Its heliacal rising, just before dawn in mid-July, coincided with the annual, life-giving inundation of the Nile River. The star's reappearance after 70 days of invisibility heralded the floodwaters that would deposit rich, black silt across the fields, ensuring the kingdom's survival for another year. Sirius was not just a marker, it was the celestial heart of Isis, whose tears for her slain husband Osiris were believed to cause the Nile to rise. The star's connection to cyclical rebirth and cosmic order was absolute. But Sirius holds a second, more modern legend that has sparked intense debate. This returns us to the Dogon people of Mali and their reported knowledge of Sirius B. This dense, white dwarf star is invisible to the naked eye, a tiny companion locked in a 50-year orbit around brilliant Sirius A. Mainstream astronomy only confirmed its existence in the 19th century, and its incredible density, a teaspoon of its material weighing many tons, was understood even later. Yet, anthropological studies in the 1930s and 40s recorded Dogon oral traditions describing a small, heavy star called Potolo that orbited Sirius. They knew its orbital period, they knew it was made of a metal heavier than iron, and they celebrated its cycle with a major festival. How could this be? One explanation is cultural contamination, that European visitors or missionaries in the late 19th or early 20th century, aware of the astronomical discovery, passed this information to the Dogon, who then seamlessly wove it into their existing cosmology. The other, far more speculative explanation is that this knowledge is a remnant of contact with an advanced, perhaps extraterrestrial, civilization from the Sirius system itself. This is the Sirius mystery, a puzzle that sits at the fraught intersection of anthropology, astronomy, and ancient astronaut theory. Whether seen as the tears of a goddess or a binary star known through mysterious means, both Sirius and the Pleiades served the same profound human need. They were not random lights, but anchors of meaning. They transformed the vast, impersonal cosmos into a familiar storybook and a reliable tool. One helped grow food, the other predicted the flood. One was a cluster of sisters, the other the eye of a goddess. They provided a rhythm to life and a connection to the divine, proving that for our ancestors, the sky was never empty. It was a map, a clock, and a scripture, all written in starlight. And if some of that starlight seems to carry impossible knowledge, it only deepens the mystery of what we think we know about our own past. The stars may guide our way, but the most profound quests often lead inward, to objects of legend that promise not just knowledge, but fundamental transformation. This brings us to two of history's most coveted treasures, the Holy Grail and the Philosopher's Stone. On the surface, one is a sacred Christian relic, the other a tool of medieval science. Yet their legends are intertwined, each representing humanity's ultimate desire to transcend the limits of the material world. We know the Holy Grail best from the chivalric romances of King Arthur's court. In these stories, it is the cup used by Jesus at the Last Supper, later brought to Britain by Joseph of Arimathea. It is a vessel of immense power, capable of providing endless sustenance and healing the gravest wounds. The Knights of the Round Table, most famously the pure Sir Galahad, embark on the perilous quest for the Grail, a spiritual journey through haunted forests and mystical castles, where the greatest challenge is often the knight's own heart. To behold the Grail is to achieve a state of divine grace, a direct communion with the sacred. But scholars have long noted that this Christian vessel rests upon a much older foundation. In Celtic mythology, there are abundant cauldrons of plenty, magical horns that never empty, and cups belonging to gods of the land that confer kingship and prosperity. These objects were symbols of sovereignty, the divine right of a true king to ensure the fertility and well-being of his people. The Grail, then, is a fusion. It is the Christianization of a primal symbol of life and authority, transforming a pagan cup of earthly bounty into a vessel of heavenly grace. The quest is no longer just about finding a magical object. It is an arduous path of purification, where the seeker must confront their own flaws and desires. The Grail does not simply appear. It reveals itself only to the one who has become worthy. In this way, the legend becomes a powerful metaphor for the soul's journey toward enlightenment, a search for a wholeness that can only be found by looking within. If the Grail represents a spiritual alchemy, The Philosopher's Stone aimed to achieve that transformation in the physical world. For centuries, alchemists across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia pursued this legendary substance, the magnum opus, or great work. Its purported powers were twofold. First, it could perform the transmutation of base metals, like lead, into perfect, incorruptible gold. Second, and perhaps more importantly, it could create the elixir of life, a potion granting health, longevity, and even immortality. The search was not merely for riches, but for mastery over nature's most fundamental laws. Alchemical texts are filled with cryptic symbols: the green lion devouring the sun, the chemical wedding of the red king and white queen, all describing a secret process of purification, dissolution, and recombination. The base metal was seen as the unenlightened soul, burdened with impurities. Through a series of symbolic deaths and rebirths in the laboratory, it could be refined into its perfect, golden state. The stone was not just a physical object, but the culmination of this inner work. The alchemist had to transform themselves, cultivating wisdom, patience, and virtue, to ever hope of producing the stone. In this sense, the quest for the Philosopher's Stone runs parallel to the quest for the Holy Grail. Both are searches for a catalyst of perfection. One works on the spirit, the other on matter, but both promise liberation from decay and limitation. They speak to a timeless human conviction that hidden within the dross of the ordinary world lies a key to the extraordinary, a principle of transformation that can elevate everything it touches. Together, these twin legends form a powerful dialectic. The Grail calls us upward, toward spiritual union with the divine. The stone calls us inward, to unlock the latent perfection hidden within nature and ourselves. One is a gift of grace, the other a prize of knowledge. Yet both quests are fueled by the same ancient yearning, to touch the fundamental magic of existence, to find the point where spirit and matter meet, and to become, in some small way, co-creators with the cosmos itself. The quest for spiritual and material perfection often leads us to imagine a world where such ideals were once a lived reality. This yearning gives rise to a powerful archetype, the sunken continent, a paradise lost beneath the waves. While Atlantis is the most famous, it is not alone in the depths of our imagination. Two other legendary lands, Lemuria and Mu, share the ocean floor with it in the realm of myth, each born from a unique blend of science, speculation, and spiritual longing. Their stories reveal how easily a scientific hypothesis can transform into a cultural legend, and why the idea of a sunken cradle of civilization refuses to die. The tale of Lemuria begins not with ancient priests, but with 19th-century scientists puzzling over a zoological mystery. Naturalists had discovered fossils of lemurs, small primates, in both Madagascar and India, but not in the lands between. To explain this distribution, the biologist Philip Sclater proposed a bold idea in 1864. He suggested a vast, now submerged land bridge in the Indian Ocean, which he named Lemuria after the creatures it supposedly carried. This was a legitimate, if ultimately incorrect, scientific hypothesis of its time, a placeholder for a mystery that plate tectonics would later solve. But the story of Lemuria was just beginning. It was soon adopted by the emerging theosophical movement founded by Helena Blavatsky. In her seminal work, The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky reimagined Lemuria not as a land bridge for animals, but as the home of the third root race of humanity. Her Lemurians were described as spiritually advanced, egg-laying giants with a third eye and psychic abilities, living in a harmonious society before their continent met a catastrophic end. Here, a dry geological theory was reborn as a full-fledged mythos, a lost world of esoteric wisdom that predated and informed all later civilizations. This spiritual Lemuria took on a life of its own, becoming a cornerstone of alternative history and New Age thought, a symbol of an age when humanity was more intuitively connected to cosmic truths. Across the Pacific, a similar story was unfolding with the legend of Mu, sometimes called Pan. Its popularizer was a colorful and controversial figure, Augustus Le Plongeon, a 19th-century amateur archaeologist who worked among the Maya ruins of Yucatan. Le Plongeon believed he had deciphered Mayan hieroglyphs, which he claimed told the story of an even older civilization. He called this ancient homeland Mu, a vast continent in the Pacific Ocean that was, in his view, the true cradle of all human culture, including that of Egypt and Mesoamerica. He argued that when Mu sank in a terrible cataclysm, its survivors spread across the globe, seeding the great civilizations we know. Like the theosophical Lemuria, Laplangen's Mu was a construct, built not from solid archaeology, but from imaginative interpretation. His theories were dismissed by mainstream scholars, but they were enthusiastically expanded upon by writers like James Churchward in the early 20th century, who filled volumes with detailed descriptions of Mu's advanced technology, social structure, and catastrophic demise. So why, when the scientific origins of these places have been thoroughly debunked, do Lemuria and Mu persist in our collective imagination? They fulfill the same deep need as Atlantis. They are blank canvases upon which we project our ideals and our anxieties. In a world that often feels fragmented and spiritually barren, the idea of a unified, spiritually enlightened homeland offers profound comfort. It suggests that our current state is not our original or final state, that we have fallen from a higher plane of existence. These lost continents also provide a tantalizing solution to archaeological puzzles. How do we explain similarities between distant cultures, like pyramid building or flood myths? The concept of a single, shared progenitor civilization, now vanished, offers a simple, elegant, if unproven answer. It shortcuts the complex, messy processes of independent invention and cultural diffusion. Lemuria and Mu are more than just failed science. They are modern myths in the making. They show us that the human mind, when confronted with gaps in knowledge or a longing for a golden age, will instinctively build a bridge to a forgotten world. They remind us that sometimes the most powerful legends are not those handed down from antiquity, but those we create ourselves to explain the silences in our own history. These sunken continents whisper of a time before history, but what if our past was shaped not by lost lands, but by beings who descended from the sky? This brings us to two of the most provocative and intertwined legends in our cosmic storybook, tales of divine beings who walked among us in the dawn of civilization. From the dusty plains of ancient Sumer come the Anunnaki, and from the pages of the Hebrew Bible emerge the Nephilim. These are not distant, abstract gods, but powerful entities who directly intervened in human affairs, leaving a legacy written in clay and scripture. To understand them, we must first listen to their original voices. In the world's oldest written stories, etched on Sumerian cuneiform tablets, the Anunnaki hold a central role. Their name translates to princely offspring or those of royal blood, for they were the children of the sky god An and the earth goddess Kai. They were not the supreme creators, but a pantheon of administrator deities, a divine council tasked with managing the cosmos. Key figures among them include Enlil, the lord of the air and command, Enki, the clever god of wisdom and fresh waters, and Inanna, the formidable goddess of love and war. According to the Sumerian creation myth, the Atrahasis, the younger Anunnaki grew tired of their labor maintaining the universe. In response, the wise Enki devised a solution. He mixed the flesh and blood of a slain god with clay to create a new being, humanity, to bear the burden of work. Lulu Amilu, the first human, literally means the mixed one. This origin story is profound. It establishes humanity as a hybrid creation, part divine and part earthly, fashioned specifically to serve these celestial overlords. The Anunnaki were not merely worshipped, they were seen as the source of kingship, law, and advanced knowledge, the divine authority behind the first city-states. Now, shift the scene to the ancient Near East a few centuries later, and open the book of Genesis. In chapter 6, a cryptic and troubling passage appears. It states that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took wives for themselves of all that they chose. The passage continues. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men of old, the men of renown. The term Nephilim is often translated as giants or the fallen ones. The sons of God are interpreted by many ancient scholars as divine beings, perhaps angels or lesser gods. Their union with human women produced a hybrid race of giants and heroes, whose presence, along with the growing wickedness of humanity, prompted God to send the Great Flood as a reset. The parallels between these two accounts are striking enough to have fueled centuries of speculation. Both describe a pantheon of divine beings who interact directly with humanity. Both involve a mixing of the divine and the human, resulting in a new order of beings, and both are set in the primordial time before a great flood. This has led to a compelling, though highly controversial, synthesis. In the 1970s, author Zecharia Sitchin proposed a radical interpretation based on his own translations of Sumerian texts. He argued that the Anunnaki were not gods, but astronauts from a planet called Nibiru. According to Sitchin, they came to Earth in search of gold to repair their atmosphere, genetically engineered Homo sapiens, as a slave race to mine it, and that the biblical Nephilim are the same beings, the offspring of these astronauts and human women. This narrative, presented in his Earth Chronicles series, became a cornerstone of modern ancient astronaut theory. It is crucial to understand that Sitchin's translations are almost universally rejected by mainstream linguists and Assyriologists. They argue he took poetic metaphors and divine epithets literally, constructing a science fiction saga from texts that ancient Sumerians understood as mythology. The scholarly consensus views the Anunnaki as purely mythological figures within the Sumerian religious framework. So, if we set aside the extraterrestrial hypothesis, what deeper purpose did these legends serve for the people who told them? They were foundational explanations for the human condition. The Anunnaki story explained why we labor and toil. It was our divinely ordained purpose from the start. It explained social hierarchy, as kings claimed to rule by the mandate of these gods. The Nephilim story, on the other hand, grappled with the origins of evil and violence. It provided a reason for the flood, a cleansing of a world corrupted by the unnatural union of heaven and earth. It also explained the existence of ancient megalithic structures and tales of giant heroes, attributing them to a semi-divine race that once walked the land. Together, the Anunnaki and the Nephilim represent humanity's early attempts to answer profound questions. Why are we here? Why do we suffer? Where did kings and heroes come from? By weaving tales of direct divine intervention, our ancestors made sense of their world's structure and its scars. These legends placed humanity at the center of a cosmic drama, children of a messy, intimate relationship between the earthly and the divine, forever marked by that original encounter. The idea of giants walking the earth fades, but the desire to hear the whispers of the gods remains. In the ancient world, this hunger for foresight was not satisfied by quiet prayer alone, but through formal, earth-shaking channels where the divine voice was believed to speak directly. Two of the most powerful of these were the Oracle at Delphi and the Sibylline books, one a living woman channeling a god, the other a sacred text holding a nation's destiny. High on the slopes of Mount Parnassus in Greece, the air itself seemed charged with mystery. This was Delphi, the center of the world according to legend, marked by a sacred stone called the Omphalos, the navel of the earth. Here, in the temple of Apollo, the god of prophecy spoke through a single human vessel, the Pythia. She was not a priestess in the way we imagine, but an ordinary woman, often from a local village, chosen to serve. Before giving a prophecy, she would undergo a profound ritual. She would bathe in the Castalian spring, chew sacred laurel leaves, and then descend into a small, enclosed chamber beneath the temple. Ancient sources describe a strange, sweet smell rising from a crack in the earth there. Modern geological studies suggest this could have been ethylene, a hydrocarbon gas that can induce a trance-like, euphoric state. Breathing these vapors, the Pythia would enter a frenzy. She would sit on a three-legged stool over the fissure, shaking and murmuring. Her incoherent cries were then interpreted and shaped into poetic hexameters by the temple priests, who delivered the final, famously ambiguous prophecy to the seeker. These seekers were not common folk, but kings, generals, and city-states, asking questions of war, colonization, and fate. The oracle's words were never clear. When King Croesus of Lydia asked if he should attack Persia, the oracle said a great empire would fall. He attacked, and his own empire fell. The prophecy was true, but its meaning was a trap of language. This ambiguity was the point. It placed the burden of interpretation and responsibility back on the human questioner, forcing them to confront their own assumptions and desires. The Pythia was the trembling bridge between the rational world of human politics and the chaotic, unknowable will of the cosmos, a bridge built over a literal crack in the earth. Far to the west, in the rising power of Rome, they sought a different kind of divine assurance, not a frenzied voice but a written code. The legend of the Sibylline books begins with a mysterious old woman approaching the last Roman king, Tarquin the Proud. She offered to sell him 9 books of prophecies at an exorbitant price. He refused, thinking her mad. She burned 3 of the books and offered the remaining 6 at the original price. He refused again. She burned 3 more and offered the final 3, still at the same price. This time, troubled by her persistence, Tarquin consulted his augurs, who berated him for not buying all 9. He finally paid the full price for the 3 surviving books. These became the Sibylline books, kept in a stone chest beneath the Temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill, guarded by a special college of priests. They were not to be read at random. They could only be consulted by order of the Roman Senate in times of extreme crisis, such as plague, military disaster, or strange omens. The books did not predict specific future events like a timeline. Instead, they prescribed rituals, sacrifices, and the introduction of new gods to appease the divine anger and restore the Pax Deorum, the peace with the gods. When Hannibal was crushing Roman armies during the Second Punic War, it was the Sibylline books that recommended bringing the cult of the Great Mother, Cybele, from Anatolia to Rome. This was state-sponsored divination on a grand scale. The books were less about knowing the future than about managing it, a divine manual for civic survival that placed Rome's fate squarely within a framework of ritual correctness and cosmic negotiation. Both the oracle and the books reveal a profound truth about ancient societies. Access to the future was seen as a tangible resource, as critical as grain or soldiers. The Pythia offered a personal, terrifying, and subjective connection to Apollo's will, a voice that could launch 1,000 ships or doom a dynasty with a riddle. The Sibylline books provided Rome with an institutional, procedural link to the cosmic order, a set of divine instructions that could be followed to secure the state's continued favor. One was an unpredictable art, the other a bureaucratic science of the sacred. Together, they show us that for our ancestors, the future was not an abstract concept, but a territory to be mapped, negotiated, and sometimes desperately purchased from an old woman at the gates. But what if the voice of the gods fell silent and the sacred books crumbled to dust? Humanity's quest would turn from seeking divine answers to seeking a power even more fundamental, the mastery of life itself. This brings us to 2 legendary solutions etched not in prophecy, but in the very landscape and the laboratory, the fountain of youth and the elixir of life. These are not stories of gods granting immortality, but of mortals daring to seize it for themselves, a quest that would send explorers across oceans and alchemists into decades of smoky toil. The legend of the Fountain of Youth is a place, a destination. Its most famous seeker was the Spanish conquistador Juan Ponce de Leon, who, in the early 1500s, was said to have sailed to the New World specifically to find its miraculous waters. While historians debate his precise motivations, the story captured the European imagination. It spoke of a spring whose waters could reverse aging, restoring youth and vitality to anyone who drank or bathed in them. But the idea is far older than the age of exploration. Over 1,000 years before Ponce de Leon, the Greek historian Herodotus wrote of a fountain of the sun in Ethiopia, whose waters were so light that nothing could float in them, and which bestowed extraordinary vigor. In the legends of Alexander the Great, his cook discovers a spring that restores a dead fish to life, a clear symbol of rejuvenation. The fountain represents a geographic secret, a hidden wellspring of primordial energy where the normal rules of decay are suspended. It is a passive magic, a gift of the earth itself, waiting to be found by the worthy or the lucky. Its power is external, a matter of location and discovery. The elixir of life, however, is something you must create. This is the active pursuit of immortality, the magnum opus of alchemical traditions across the world. In ancient China, the quest for the elixir, or Dan, was a sophisticated and perilous science. Alchemists like Ji Hong in the 4th century wrote extensively of compounding elixirs from cinnabar, gold, jade, and rare herbs, believing these substances could purify the body and spirit, leading to physical immortality and ascension as a Zion, an immortal being. Imperial courts funded these experiments, and tragically, several emperors are believed to have died from poisoning by elixirs containing mercury and arsenic, a dark testament to the deadly earnestness of the search. In medieval Europe, the elixir was often seen as a red liquid or powder, a tangible product of the philosopher's stone. It was the ultimate medicine, capable of curing all disease and halting the aging process entirely. The search drove centuries of experimentation, blending practical chemistry with mystical symbolism. The elixir was not just a potion, it was the culmination of a lifetime's work in purifying both matter and the alchemist's own soul. Here, immortality was not found, it was forged. These twin legends, the fountain and the elixir, represent two sides of the same human yearning. One looks outward, to a paradise where nature provides the answer. The other looks inward, to the workshop where human knowledge and will can unlock nature's deepest secret. They blur the lines between geography and chemistry, between a divine blessing hidden in a forest and a recipe that could, in theory, be replicated by anyone with the skill. Ultimately, they are about control. The fountain suggests that if we can just map the world completely, we will find the cure for death. The elixir suggests that if we can just understand matter completely, we can synthesize that cure ourselves. Both are expressions of a refusal to accept our mortal limits, a bold, sometimes reckless, declaration that aging is not a fate, but a solvable problem. They remind us that long before modern biotechnology, the dream of eternal youth was already the oldest and most compelling experiment of all. The quest for eternal life can become its own kind of prison, a truth embodied by two haunting figures forever denied rest. One walks the dusty roads of the earth, the other sails the stormy seas, both bound by a curse that stretches time itself into a torment. These are the eternal wanderers, the wandering Jew and the flying Dutchman, two sides of the same ancient coin of divine punishment. Their stories begin in moments of profound disrespect. For the wandering Jew, the legend stems from a brief, cruel encounter during the Passion of Christ. As Jesus struggled beneath the weight of the cross on the road to Calvary, he paused to rest against the door of a cobbler named Ahasuerus. The man, impatient and scornful, told him to move on and not linger. Jesus responded, "I will stand and rest, but you shall go on forever." With those words, Ahasuerus was condemned to walk the earth without rest or death, a living witness to the truth of Christ until the second coming. He is not a villain in the grand sense, but a portrait of a mundane, everyday cruelty met with an unimaginable consequence. His punishment is not fire or brimstone, but endless time. He must watch empires rise and fall, languages change and generations turn to dust, all while remaining unchanged, a perpetual outsider. His curse is one of profound loneliness and observation, forced to walk until the end of all things. The Flying Dutchman shifts the scene from land to the unforgiving ocean. Its captain, often named Hendrik van der Decken in later tellings, is a man of monstrous pride. As he attempted to round the Cape of Good Hope, a legendary graveyard of ships, a hurricane rose to block his passage. In his arrogance and determination to keep his schedule, he swore a blasphemous oath. He vowed to round the Cape even if it took him until the day of judgment, and he challenged God himself to stop him. For this defiance of natural and divine law, his punishment was sealed. His ship, the Flying Dutchman, was doomed to never make port, forced to sail the world's oceans for eternity. It is seen as a ghostly apparition in the midst of storms, a spectral ship with tattered sails and a ghostly crew, a harbinger of doom for any living sailor who sights it. The captain's curse is one of endless, futile labor. Where the wandering Jew walks with no destination, the Dutchman's crew sails with a destination they can never reach, trapped in the very act of their journey forever. Though one is terrestrial and the other maritime, these legends are mirror images. They are archetypes of a punishment that fits the crime. The cobbler's impatient dismissal of a suffering man results in his own endless, weary journey. The captain's arrogant challenge to the storm results in his eternal battle against the sea. Both are transformed into living, moving monuments to a single, fatal mistake. They serve as powerful moral cautionary tales for their respective domains. For communities on land, The Wandering Jew was a story about compassion, warning against the sin of turning away those in suffering, showing that a moment of callousness could fracture a soul's destiny for all time. For seafaring cultures, the Flying Dutchman was the ultimate lesson in humility. It warned sailors against hubris, against defying the natural limits set by wind and wave, and against invoking the divine in rage. The sea was a realm of chaos barely held in check by skill and respect. The Dutchman showed what happened when that respect shattered. But beyond their moral function, these figures tap into a deeper, more universal human anxiety, the terror of restless exile. They embody the state of being permanently unhomed, forever in between, never allowed the peace of an ending. The Wandering Jew is the immigrant who never assimilates, the refugee who can never return, the person out of sync with their own era. The Flying Dutchman is the work that never finishes, the quest with no conclusion, the soul adrift without an anchor. They are not just being punished, they are being made into living symbols of the punishment itself, forced to perform their exile for all to see. In a world where community and belonging were everything, their stories presented a fate worse than death, eternal separation from the human fold. A warning that resonated in the bones of every listener who knew the comfort of a hearth and the safety of a harbor. Eternal exile is a profound punishment, but some beings are defined not by a curse, but by a sacred, generative presence in the very land itself. Across the vastness of Australia, the earth itself tells a story of creation, and its author is the rainbow serpent. Known by many names among the hundreds of Aboriginal language groups, this being is not a monster to be slain, but a primal, dreaming force. In the beginning, the rainbow serpent slept beneath the flat, featureless earth. Upon awakening, it pushed up through the crust, its massive body carving out the valleys, gorges, and riverbeds as it moved. Where it rested, it left waterholes and billabongs, the vital sources of life in an arid continent. Its shedding skin formed the mineral deposits and the colors of the earth. The serpent is intimately tied to water, the bringer of rain and fertility, and its arching form in the sky is the rainbow, a bridge between the earth and the spiritual realm. This creator is also moral guardian, a lawgiver who established the sacred sites and the codes of behavior for the people. To harm the land or break the law is to offend the rainbow serpent, who can bring drought or flood as a consequence. Its story is not a myth of the distant past, but a living, continuous narrative. The land is its body, and every feature is a paragraph in an epic written in stone and water, a testament to a world where creation is an ongoing, conscious act. From the sun-baked earth of Australia, we travel to the storm-racked skies and dense forests of North America, where another primal force takes wing. The Thunderbird is a being of immense scale and power, central to the traditions of many indigenous peoples, from the Lakota to the tribes of the Pacific Northwest. It is not merely a large bird, but a supreme spirit whose very existence orchestrates the weather. The thunder is the sound of its powerful wingbeats. The lightning is the flash from its piercing eyes or the gleam of its feathers. It is the master of the upper world, often in conflict with the great horned serpents or underwater panthers of the lower world, their battles manifesting as the thunderstorms that cleanse and renew the land. For the Kwakwaka'wakwa people of the Pacific Northwest, the Thunderbird is a central crest, a symbol of lineage and supernatural authority, carved onto towering totem poles. Its captured prey, often the whale, symbolizes immense power and bounty. The Thunderbird is both a fearsome force of nature and a protective guardian, a being whose anger brings the storm, but whose presence ensures the cyclical return of rain and life. Both the rainbow serpent and the Thunderbird embody a worldview where the natural environment is not a resource, but a relative, alive with conscious, divine power. They are not distant gods on a mountain, but immanent forces in the waterhole and the storm cloud. They explain the origins of the landscape and the mechanics of the weather, but they do so by weaving them into a rich tapestry of spiritual meaning and social law. These legends teach that humans are part of this living system, subject to its rules and dependent on its balance. To hear the thunder is to remember the great bird's flight. To see a rainbow is to witness the serpent's bridge between worlds. In these stories, the cosmos is not silent. It speaks in the shape of the land and the voice of the sky. A continuous creation story written in elements we can see and feel every day. The land and sky speak of primal forces, but what if perfection is not a memory or a force of nature, but a place, hidden and waiting? This brings us to two of the most persistent legends of hidden worlds, one nestled in the remote mountains of Asia, the other buried beneath our very feet. These are the city of Shambhala and the theory of a hollow earth, twin fantasies of a sanctuary concealed within the known world. Their power lies not in ancient prophecy alone, but in their startling journey into modern history, where they fueled both spiritual longing and dark, political obsession. Deep within the Kalachakra Tantra, a profound text of Tibetan Buddhism, lies the prophecy of Shambhala. It is described not as a heavenly realm, but as a physical kingdom, hidden somewhere north of the Himalayas, surrounded by a ring of snowy peaks. Its capital, Kalepa, is a place of breathtaking beauty and architectural wonder, where the inhabitants live in harmony, free from poverty, sickness, or war, guided by the teachings of the Kalachakra. This is not a paradise for escape, but a fortress of preservation. The legend states that as the world descends into an age of greed, hatred, and conflict, a line of enlightened kings will rule Shambhala. Finally, when the darkness is at its peak, the 25th king, known as Rudrachakran, the wrathful wheel-turner, will emerge with a vast army. They will defeat the forces of materialism and tyranny, ushering in a new golden age of peace and wisdom. Shambhala is thus a legend of immense hope, a promise that goodness is not absent, but merely waiting, gathering its strength in a secret valley, ready to intervene when all seems lost. Its appeal is timeless, offering a spiritual antidote to a world in decay. Yet this very appeal made it a target for twisted interpretation. In the 1920s and 30s, German occultists and later, high-ranking members of the Nazi SS became fascinated with Shambhala. They reinterpreted it not as a Buddhist Pure Land, but as the ancestral homeland of the Aryan race, a Hyperborean kingdom of white, superhuman beings. Figures like Heinrich Himmler sent expeditions to Tibet, not for spiritual enlightenment, but in a grotesque quest to find evidence of this lost Aryan master race and tap into its supposed occult power. The Nazi distortion of Shambhala stands as a chilling example of how a spiritual symbol of hope can be weaponized into a myth of racial supremacy and conquest, its message of inner peace perverted into a blueprint for outer domination. If Shambhala is a kingdom hidden in mountains, the Hollow Earth theory proposes a world hidden inside the planet itself. The idea that Earth is hollow, with inner suns, oceans, and civilizations, has flickered at the edges of science and speculation for centuries. It was popularized in the early 19th century by an American Army officer, John Cleves Sims Jr. He proposed that the planet was composed of concentric spheres, open at the poles, and habitable within. He passionately lobbied Congress to fund an expedition to the North Pole to find the entrance, the Sims Hole. While he was ridiculed by the scientific establishment, his ideas captured the public imagination and inspired a wave of fiction, most famously Jules Verne's journey to the center of the Earth. The theory's appeal is visceral. It suggests that the greatest adventures and discoveries are not in outer space, but literally under our feet. It transforms our planet from a solid rock into a vessel, a cosmic Russian doll holding another world within. Like Shambhala, this legend was also co-opted by Nazi occultists who believed the Hollow Earth might house Agartha, another mythical inner world kingdom, and that advanced Vril energy or flying saucers might originate from these subterranean realms. In the 20th century, the Hollow Earth found a new home in New Age and UFO lore, becoming a catch-all explanation for everything from lost Atlantis to mysterious aerial phenomena. What do these two hidden world legends, one Eastern and spiritual, one Western and pseudoscientific, ultimately reveal? They are expressions of the same profound human desire, the hope that the broken world we see is not all there is. That somewhere, whether in a remote valley or a cavern beneath the crust, exists a society that has solved the riddles of conflict, suffering, and scarcity. Shambhala offers a spiritual solution, preserved by enlightened beings. The Hollow Earth offers a physical one, a literal new frontier. Both are acts of radical imagination, refusing to accept that the map is complete. They whisper that salvation, or at least mystery, might be closer than we think, not in the distant stars, but in the uncharted mountains or the unexplored depths, waiting just beyond the edge of every known thing. Hidden worlds offer sanctuary, but every society that walks in the open needs a story to explain who leads and why. Two of history's most powerful political legends gave exactly that, weaving the authority to rule directly into the fabric of the cosmos itself. In the East, it was the mandate of heaven. In the West, the divine right of kings. These were not just laws, they were complete cosmologies, entire worldviews built to answer one burning question: by what right does one person command millions? The answer came not from constitutions or votes, but from the silent judgment of the universe. The concept of the mandate of heaven, or Tiananmen, shaped Chinese civilization for millennia. Its genius was in its beautiful, terrifying balance. The emperor, the son of heaven, did not rule by brute force alone. He held a sacred trust, a mandate, granted by heaven itself because of his personal virtue and his ability to govern wisely and justly. This mandate was visible in the prosperity of the realm, bountiful harvests, and social harmony. But here was the crucial, revolutionary twist: the mandate was conditional. If an emperor became corrupt, selfish, or incompetent, heaven would withdraw its favor. How would the people know? The signs were clear: natural disasters like floods or famines, peasant rebellions, and military defeats. These were not mere tragedies, they were cosmic signals that the ruler had lost the mandate. This provided a powerful justification for dynastic change. A successful rebel was not a traitor. He was the instrument of heaven's will, proving his own virtue by his success and his ability to restore order. The old dynasty had lost the way, and the new one had received the mandate. It was a self-correcting system, a divine feedback loop that made political revolution a part of the natural, moral order of the cosmos. Across the world in medieval and early modern Europe, a different celestial contract took hold. The divine right of kings argued that a monarch's authority came directly from God, not from the people, the church, or any earthly institution. The king was God's lieutenant on earth, and to oppose him was to oppose God's own ordinance. This idea was crystallized in the 17th century by thinkers like King James I of England, who wrote that kings are not only God's lieutenants upon earth, but even by God himself they are called gods. This created a formidable shield around royal power. Since the king answered only to God, parliaments, nobles, or common people had no inherent right to question or depose him. Rebellion was not just treason, it was a mortal sin. This doctrine created immense stability, for a time, by making the king's person and position nearly untouchable, a fixed point in the political universe around which all else revolved. So how do these two legendary systems compare? Both root political power in a divine source, making it sacred and lifting it above mere human whim. Both aim to create order from the chaos of human ambition. But their mechanisms are almost opposite. The mandate of heaven is dynamic and cyclical. Power flows from heaven to the virtuous ruler, but it can be taken away and given to another. It is a system built for change, using cosmic principles to explain and justify the fall of dynasties. It places the burden of proof on the ruler to maintain his virtue. The divine right of kings, in contrast, is static and linear. Power is bestowed by God upon a specific bloodline and remains there. It is a system built for permanence, using cosmic principles to prevent change and cement a single family's hold on the throne. It places the burden of obedience squarely on the people. One sees the cosmos as a judge, the other sees it as a crown giver. These legends show us that before democracy, the most effective way to legitimize power was to make it part of the sky's business. A good harvest was proof of a king's virtue. A rebellion was proof of heaven's displeasure. A coronation was an act of divine appointment. They transformed politics from a messy human struggle into a chapter of sacred history, where every victory and every downfall carried the weight of cosmic meaning. In the end, whether the mandate could be lost or the right was absolute, both stories served the same profound purpose: to convince the hearts and minds of millions that the person on the throne was there because the universe itself had willed it. Divine right and heavenly mandate seek to freeze a moment of cosmic order, but the universe itself is never still. Our final legend embraces that perpetual motion in its most elegant and profound form. It is the legend of the cosmic dance of Shiva, and it offers not a map of hidden kingdoms or a charter for kings, but a vision of reality itself as a sublime, endless performance. In the heart of Hindu tradition, the god Shiva manifests as Nataraja, the Lord of Dance. His image is one of breathtaking balance and terrifying power. He dances within a blazing circle of flames, one leg gracefully raised, the other planted upon a crouching demon. His forearms are a symphony of meaning, each holding an object that tells a chapter of the cosmic story. This is not a dance for entertainment, it is the dance of the universe, the very rhythm of existence made visible. To understand Nataraja is to understand a worldview where creation and destruction are not opposites, but partners in an eternal, joyful cycle. Let us decode his symbols, starting with the sound that begins it all. In his upper right hand, Shiva holds a small drum, called the damaru. Its shape is two triangles joined at their points, representing the inseparable union of male and female principles. When Shiva beats this drum, it emits the primal sound, the vibration that structures matter and brings the universe into being from the formless void. This is the rhythm of creation, the first note in the cosmic symphony. Now, look to his upper left hand. Here he holds a tongue of flame. This is the fire of destruction, of transformation. It consumes the old, the worn out, the stagnant, but in this philosophy, destruction is never an end. It is the necessary clearing away that makes space for the new creation heralded by the drum. The flame does not annihilate meaning, it refines it, burning away illusion to reveal essential truth. The circle of flames that encircles Shiva, the Prabha Mandala, represents this entire process, the endless cycle of cosmic energy, the universe in its continual state of birth, death, and rebirth. His lower right hand is raised in the Abhaya Mudra, a gesture that means fear not. This is a promise of reassurance amidst the terrifying spectacle of cosmic dissolution. It says, "Do not fear the fire, for it is part of the dance." The destruction is not random violence, but a purposeful step in a divine choreography. The raised left foot points to this liberation. It signifies release, the path of grace by which the soul can escape the relentless cycle of birth and rebirth, to merge with the infinite dancer himself. And beneath his planted right foot, crushed and helpless, lies the dwarf demon Apasmara, who represents ignorance, forgetfulness, and inertia. This is a crucial detail. Shiva does not ignore ignorance, he does not battle it from afar. He subdues it underfoot, making it the very stage upon which he dances. Enlightenment is not found by fleeing the world of delusion, but by mastering it, by using it as the foundation for your highest expression. The entire statue is a masterpiece of equilibrium. His flowing hair whips out wildly from the fury of the dance, yet his face is serene, detached, immersed in a state of blissful awareness. The dance is frantic, yet the dancer is perfectly still at the center. This is the ultimate message of Nataraja. The cosmos is not a static creation, but a dynamic, ongoing event. It is a dance of energy, where every subatomic particle, every galaxy, every human life, is part of the movement. Sorrow, decay, and endings are not mistakes or punishments. They are the leftward sweep of the flame, making way for the rightward beat of the drum. This legend concludes our journey through 30 astonishing visions of the divine cosmos, with a perspective that is both terrifying and deeply comforting. It does not promise a lost paradise or a final heaven, but finds the sacred in the relentless, beautiful, and destructive process of change itself. In the end, we are not just observers of these legends, we are living within their echoes, on a planet spinning in the silent, flaming circle of a star, part of a dance that has no beginning and promises no end. only the everlasting, joyous rhythm of becoming. Shiva's cosmic dance reveals a universe in perpetual motion, but our minds crave more than just observation. We long to understand our place within that dance. Having journeyed through 30 astonishing legends, from cosmic eggs to sunken continents, a profound question now surfaces. Why do these stories, with their uncanny similarities, echo across every continent and every epoch of human history? The answer lies not in ancient astronauts or shared memories of lost worlds, but in the very architecture of the human psyche. These legends were humanity's first and most vital tools for survival, born from a deep, psychological need to make sense of an overwhelming existence. First and foremost, these stories were our original science. Before telescopes or microscopes, before the language of physics, the human mind confronted a world of bewildering power. The sun vanished in the middle of the day during an eclipse. A streak of terrifying light, a comet, would scar the night sky. Storms could erase a village, and floods could swallow the known world. The primal human response was not to ignore these events, but to explain them. And so, legends were born. An eclipse was not a celestial alignment, it was a dragon or a demon swallowing the sun. A story that demanded a response, like banging pots to scare the beast away. The comet was not a ball of ice, but a fiery messenger of the gods, a portent of a king's death or a coming war. The Great Flood was not a climatic shift, but a divine punishment. These narratives transformed random, frightening natural phenomena into events with cause and effect. They imposed a storyline on chaos, making the unpredictable feel, in some way, manageable. They were the first theories of everything, providing a coherent, if mythical, framework for how the world worked. Beyond explanation, these cosmic legends provided something even more crucial: comfort. The universe is vast, silent, and often indifferent. To face that immensity alone, with no narrative, is a terrifying prospect. Myths built a shelter in that emptiness. They populated the sky with familiar characters: the chariot of Helios, the tears of Isis as Sirius, the battles of Thor. They told us the earth was not a lonely rock, but the body of a slain goddess or the platform resting on the back of a giant turtle. They gave us a cosmic axis, a world tree or a sacred mountain that anchored our reality to a divine center. These stories whispered that we were not adrift in a meaningless void. We were part of a grand, intentional drama, watched over by beings who, though powerful and sometimes wrathful, were at least conscious of our existence. This imposed order was a psychological lifeline, a way to stare into the starry abyss and see, not a cold void, but a storybook filled with purpose. This sense of order naturally extended into the social realm. Legends did not just explain the cosmos, they instructed us on how to live within it. They became the bedrock of moral and social codes. The tale of Lucifer's fall established the cosmic consequences of pride and rebellion. The cyclical wars of the gods, like the Aesir and Vanir, modeled conflict and resolution, showing how order emerges from struggle. The mandate of heaven directly tied a ruler's virtue to the prosperity of the land, creating a powerful system of political accountability rooted in cosmic principle. Stories of floods and destroyed paradises, like Atlantis, served as stark warnings about hubris and moral decay. These narratives encoded the values of a culture, teaching lessons about respect, courage, humility, and justice by framing them not as human inventions, but as laws woven into the fabric of creation itself. To break a social taboo was not just to offend your neighbor, it was to risk upsetting the balance of the cosmos. Ultimately, all these functions converge on a single, profound human need: the need for meaning. We are storytelling creatures, and we require a narrative arc for our own lives and for our species. Cosmic legends provided that grand narrative. They answered the fundamental questions that every human, in every age, eventually asks. Where did we come from? The cosmic egg, the mixed clay of the Anunnaki, the breath of a god. Why are we here? To serve the gods, to learn and grow, to maintain the sacred order. Where are we going? To a final judgment, a cyclical rebirth, or a golden age ushered in by a hidden king? These stories gave us an origin, a purpose, and a destiny. They placed our brief, flickering lives within a timeline that stretched from a divine beginning to a purposeful end. making our individual struggles and joys part of a much larger, significant whole. In the end, the true power of these 30 legends is not in their historical truth, but in their psychological truth. They are not failed science, but successful psychology. They are the magnificent, creative response of a conscious species waking up under a sky full of mysteries. They are the stories we told ourselves to ward off the terror of the unknown, to build communities, to teach our children right from wrong, and to feel, in our deepest souls, that our existence matters in the grand scheme of the cosmos. When we look up at the stars today, we may see galaxies and nebulae, but the old questions still linger in the dark between the lights. And in seeking our own modern answers, we are still performing the same ancient, essential act, weaving our own new legends in an endless search for meaning under the same vast, cosmic sky. The stories we tell about the heavens are more than just fanciful tales. They are the world's first star charts, etched not on paper, but in the collective memory of our ancestors. When a culture spoke of a dragon devouring the sun, they were not merely inventing a monster. They were describing a solar eclipse, a terrifying and inexplicable event where the sun's light was suddenly swallowed by a dark, circular shadow. The hero who slays the dragon, often with a great sword or arrow of light, symbolizes the triumphant return of the sun, restoring order to a world plunged into momentary chaos. This narrative gave a face and a plot to a frightening astronomical phenomenon, transforming it from a random act of nature into a story of cosmic conflict with a guaranteed, hopeful ending. It was a way to explain, predict through pattern recognition, and psychologically manage an event that seemed to defy the very laws of the sky. Look up on a clear winter night, and you can witness another celestial story still playing out. The constellation Orion, the Hunter, appears to eternally pursue the delicate cluster of the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters, across the dome of the sky. Greek myth explains this as the amorous pursuit of the giant Orion, from which the sisters were rescued by being turned into stars. But this is not a unique Greek fancy. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia also see the Pleiades as a group of women being chased by the young men in Orion. The indigenous Tupi people of Brazil have a nearly identical story. This global consistency is no accident. It is a direct, mythic translation of the relative positions and motions these star groups have in the night sky. The narrative was a mnemonic device, a way to remember and teach which stars were which, and to explain their seasonal behavior. When the Pleiades rose at a certain time, it wasn't just stars appearing, it was the sisters beginning their annual flight from the Hunter, a story that signaled the time to plant or to move camp. The myth was the instruction manual for the celestial calendar. This profound connection between story and sky is carved into the very earth at places like Stonehenge. Those massive, enigmatic stones are not arranged at random. Their alignments precisely frame the sunrise at the summer solstice and the sunset at the winter solstice. For the people who built it, this was not an abstract architectural feat. It was a physical manifestation of a cosmic legend, a temple where the sun god's most extreme journeys could be witnessed, measured, and honored. The solstice was not just a day on a calendar. It was a dramatic chapter in the sun's yearly story, its turning point, and the stones were the stage for that celestial drama. This pattern repeats worldwide, from the sun dagger at Chaco Canyon marking equinoxes to the pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza, casting a serpent-shaped shadow at the spring equinox. These sites are proof that ancient observation was precise, deliberate, and fundamentally sacred. Even the wandering stars, the planets, were given starring roles in this cosmic theater. The brilliant planet Venus, seen as both the morning and evening star, was a particular source of awe and confusion. To the ancient Sumerians, she was Inanna, the formidable goddess of love and war, whose dual nature mirrored the planet's two different appearances. To the Babylonians, she was Ishtar. In the Hebrew tradition, the poetic title, Light-bringer, or Lucifer, was originally a name for the dazzling morning star before its later mythic fall. These were not arbitrary assignments. Venus has a very distinct, nearly 8-year cycle of visibility. It disappears from view, then reappears in the east before dawn for a time, then vanishes again, only to return in the west after sunset. This cyclical death and rebirth made it a perfect symbol for deities associated with descent into the underworld and triumphant return, like Inanna or Dumuzi. The myth encoded the planet's observable behavior. The story of a god dying and rising was, in part, a story about a celestial body's predictable disappearance and reappearance. This reveals a breathtaking truth about our ancestors. They were not primitive people cowering in fear of the dark. They were the original astronomers, meticulous observers who tracked the motions of celestial bodies over generations. They lacked our technology, but they possessed profound patience and a holistic vision we have since fragmented. They did not separate science from spirituality or observation from storytelling. To know the sky was to know the gods. To predict the seasons was to participate in the divine order. Their legends were their data. Their myths were their textbooks. Every story of a hero, a monster, a fleeing maiden, or a dying god was also a record of a comet's path, a planet's cycle, or a constellation's rise. They looked up and saw a narrative written in light, and in telling that story, they found their place within it. The night sky was not a void. It was the first epic ever told, and we are still learning to read its chapters. The search for a dragon swallowing the sun was once a matter of banging pots and chanting prayers. Today, it is a quest conducted with sonar, satellite imagery, and gene sequencers. The modern hunt for mythic truths is not about proving every detail of an ancient story, but about listening to what those stories might be trying to tell us, using the tools of science to decode the history hidden within the legend. This investigative spirit has sent archaeologists to the bottom of the Black Sea, searching for the submerged shorelines of a lost world. In the late 1990s, marine archaeologists Robert Ballard and Frederick Hebert led expeditions that found compelling evidence. They discovered an ancient coastline, complete with drowned river valleys and shell middens from human habitation, hundreds of feet below the current surface. Radiocarbon dating of these shells suggested a rapid flooding event around 7,600 years ago, when rising global sea levels caused the Mediterranean to catastrophically breach the Bosporus Strait. For the farming communities living on those fertile shores, it would have been an apocalypse. The waters rose relentlessly, swallowing their homes and fields within a generation, perhaps within a single lifetime. This event does not prove a global flood, but it provides a stunningly precise candidate for a regional, civilization-ending deluge, a traumatic memory that could have spread with displaced survivors and evolved over millennia into the universal story of a world cleansed by water. The scientific lens also turns upward, toward the stars that inspired so much wonder. Could a sudden, brilliant new star in the ancient sky have been recorded not just in observation, but in story? Astronomers have begun cross-referencing supernova remnants with the timing of ancient rock art and myth. One compelling case comes from the indigenous Aboriginal peoples of Australia. In their oral traditions, there is a story about two brothers who fell from the sky, a tale associated with the creation of two prominent red stars in the constellation we call Gemini. In 2010, astrophysicists proposed that a supernova observed around the year 1667 and documented by European astronomers might have been visible to Aboriginal sky watchers for weeks or even months before it faded. They suggest this brilliant new light could have been incorporated into existing stories of celestial beings, a permanent record of a cosmic event written not on parchment, but in the stars of the dreamtime. This is science seeking the human echo of a stellar explosion, finding the myth in the supernova. Perhaps the most intimate evidence comes not from the Earth or the sky, but from within us. Geneticists studying the DNA of human populations have uncovered patterns that tell a story of our own past. By analyzing genetic diversity, they can identify population bottlenecks, periods when our species faced dramatic reductions in numbers. One such bottleneck appears to have occurred roughly 70,000 years ago, possibly linked to a massive volcanic eruption. But another, more recent and less severe constriction shows up in genetic data from diverse populations across the globe. Some researchers have cautiously noted that the timing of this bottleneck could be consistent with a post-Ice Age period of climatic upheaval and widespread flooding that would have scattered and isolated small groups of survivors. This genetic signature does not point to a single couple on a wooden ark, but it does hint at a shared ancient trauma, a period of extreme hardship that left its mark in our very cells and may have provided the raw, emotional material for stories of a great winnowing and a fragile new beginning. The goal of this modern inquiry is not to debunk, but to understand. It recognizes that our ancestors were superb observers of their world. A flood that covered their known horizon was, to them, a flood that covered the world. A star that blazed with the intensity of a second moon was a god making a dramatic appearance. The collapse of their advanced society into the sea was the deserved punishment of a proud people. Science sifts through the layers of symbolic meaning and cultural elaboration to find the original spark, the historical or environmental kernel that ignited the imagination. In doing so, it does not diminish these legends, it deepens our connection to them. We learn that the stories were not mere fantasies, but responses to real events, attempts to make sense of a terrifying and magnificent universe with the tools they had. The truth behind the myth is often more profound than the myth alone, for it reveals our ancestors not as gullible children, but as resilient witnesses, poets of catastrophe, and the first historians of a cosmos they were desperately trying to comprehend. A story told around a fire can topple a throne. The cosmic legends we have explored were not passive entertainments. They were active forces, blueprints for ambition and calls to arms that have redirected the flow of human history. Consider the persistent European prophecy of the great monarch. For centuries, from the Middle Ages through the Napoleonic Wars, a legend circulated that a messianic king would arise to unite Christendom, defeat Islam, and usher in a final age of peace. This was not a vague hope, but a detailed narrative woven from astrological portents and scriptural interpretation. It directly influenced royal marriages, military campaigns, and diplomatic strategy. Ambitious rulers, from the Holy Roman Emperors to Louis XIV of France, actively encouraged the belief that they might be this prophesied monarch, using the legend to bolster their legitimacy and justify expansionist wars. The prophecy shaped reality by setting a template for power that kings and emperors strove to fit, proving that a celestial narrative could become a potent political weapon. Across the continent, another legend fueled an era of global expansion, the myth of Prester John. Since the 12th century, letters and travelers' tales spoke of a mighty Christian king ruling a fabulously wealthy empire somewhere in the vastness of the East, beyond the lands of Islam. This Prester John was said to command armies of giants, preside over a river of gems, and possess the fountain of youth itself. For medieval Europe, encircled by powerful Muslim caliphates, the story was a geopolitical fantasy of a powerful ally. When the Mongol Empire emerged, European missionaries and diplomats initially believed its leaders might be Prester John or his descendants. This belief directly motivated expeditions. Portuguese explorers like Vasco da Gama, sailing down the coast of Africa in the late 1400s, carried letters addressed to this mythical king, hoping to make contact and forge a strategic alliance against their common foes. The quest for Prester John did not discover a Christian utopia, but it did help drive the Portuguese around the Cape of Good Hope and into the Indian Ocean, permanently altering the map of the world. A legend born from wishful thinking had charted a course for real ships. Perhaps the most volatile power of these cosmic narratives is their ability to ignite social revolution. Millenarian beliefs, the conviction based on prophetic legends that a cataclysmic divine intervention is imminent to establish a 1,000-year reign of peace, have repeatedly sparked mass movements. In 16th century Germany, radical preacher Thomas Müntzer interpreted the cosmic signs of the time as a call for the poor to rise up against the nobility, seeing himself as a new Daniel ushering in God's kingdom on earth. His teachings helped fuel the brutal Peasants' War. In 19th century China, the Taiping Rebellion, one of the deadliest conflicts in human history, was led by Hong Ziyuquan, who believed he was the younger brother of Jesus Christ, sent to establish the heavenly kingdom of great peace. His ideology, a fusion of Christian millenarianism and Chinese tradition, mobilized millions against the Qing dynasty. In each case, a cosmic prophecy, a legend of divine renewal, was not a metaphor. It was a battle standard, It provided a framework that made sense of suffering, promised imminent justice, and gave ordinary people a sacred role in a universe-altering drama. These believers were not just fighting for land or rights, they were fighting to fulfill a celestial script, to bring a legendary promise down to earth through force of will. From the war rooms of kings to the holds of exploration caravels to the desperate hope of peasant armies, these stories proved their tangible power. They were more than explanations of the past, they were engines for the future. A prophecy could legitimize a crown, a mythical king could beckon a fleet over the horizon, and a vision of heavenly justice could arm a rebellion. This demonstrates the ultimate consequence of the legends we have walked through. They are not relics, they are live wires, connecting the human hunger for cosmic meaning directly to the levers of historical change, reminding us that the stories we tell about the heavens have never stayed in the sky. The power of a story to shape history carries a hidden danger, one that emerges when we forget the language in which it was written. This is the peril of literalism, the insistence that ancient cosmic legends must be read as literal, factual reports of historical or scientific events. When we force these rich, symbolic narratives into the rigid box of modern fact-checking, we risk not only misunderstanding them, but twisting them into something harmful. We have already glimpsed this distortion in the Nazi appropriation of Shambhala, transforming a Buddhist parable of inner peace into a racist fantasy of a lost Aryan homeland. The same pattern repeats with some strands of ancient astronaut theory, which can inadvertently strip ancient cultures of their own genius by suggesting they needed extraterrestrial help to build pyramids or understand the stars, reducing magnificent human achievement to the handiwork of alien visitors. This literalist approach often seeks a single, sensational truth, but in doing so, it drains the legends of their true, multidimensional power. It trades the profound for the merely provocative, looking for spaceships in every myth and missing the human heart beating within it. The true, enduring magic of these stories lies not in their potential as hidden history, but in their brilliance as profound symbolism. They are not reports from the past, but maps of the inner landscape, written in the language of metaphor. Consider the Great Flood. As a literal, global event, it clashes with geology, but as a symbol, its power is universal and undeniable. It represents the overwhelming force of chaos, the feeling that our world is being washed away by forces beyond our control, whether a personal tragedy, a societal collapse, or a spiritual crisis. The Ark is not a wooden boat, but the vessel of hope, community, or faith we must build to survive that chaos. The story is not about water, but about resilience. The cosmic serpent is not a biological creature, but a representation of the untamed, cyclical energy of life itself, which can be creative or destructive. Shiva's dance is not a performance, but a philosophical model of a universe in perpetual, dynamic balance. When we engage with these tales symbolically, we stop asking, "Did this happen?" and start asking, "What does this mean? What fear is the dragon swallowing the sun trying to name? What longing for connection does the world tree express? What internal conflict does the war between the gods mirror?" This symbolic lens unlocks the legends as timeless explorations of the human condition. They are artistic attempts to grapple with existential questions that science alone cannot answer. What is the nature of good and evil? The Fall of Lucifer explores the origin of corruption within perfection. What is our purpose? The Anunnaki creating humans to serve frames our search for meaning within a cosmos of greater powers. How do we face mortality? The Phoenix offers a vision of death as a transformational fire, not a final end. These stories are humanity's first psychology, giving form to our deepest anxieties, our highest aspirations, and our most confusing contradictions. They externalize the internal, turning inner turmoil into epic battles and spiritual yearning into quests for sacred objects. To read them symbolically is to converse with our ancestors about the very things that make us human, across the barrier of millennia. Embracing this balance allows us to hold two truths at once. We can honor the incredible observational skills of ancient cultures, their precise tracking of stars, their understanding of solstices without believing they were taught by visitors from Sirius. We can be awed by the engineering marvel of Puma Punku, while crediting the ingenuity and patience of its human builders. We can appreciate the possible kernel of a real flood event in Mesopotamian memory, while valuing the global flood myth as a profound archetype of renewal. This balanced view protects the legends from being reduced to pseudoscientific puzzles or tools for ideology. It restores them to their proper realm as works of profound imaginative art, as sacred poetry written in the language of stars and storms. They are not competitors with science, but companions to the human spirit. One tells us how the heavens go, the other tells us how to go to the heavens within. In the end, the greatest gift of these 30 legends may be this very invitation, to see the cosmos not just as a physical space, but as a mirror, reflecting back the endless, astonishing mystery of being alive within it. The same archetypes that once echoed in temple hymns now pulse through our movie screens and streaming services. Our modern myths, the blockbuster epics and space operas we devour, are built upon the very same cosmic scaffolding as the legends of old. Take the thunderous arrival of Thor in the Marvel Universe. This is not a mere adaptation of Norse myth, it is a full-scale revival. The mighty Mjolnir is not just a hammer, it is the divine right to rule made solid. The Rainbow Bridge, Bifrost, is a literalized axis mundi, a shimmering highway connecting the realm of gods to the world of men. The eternal conflict between Asgard and the Frost Giants is a direct inheritance of the cosmic struggle between order and primal chaos, a theme as old as Marduk and Tiamat. Marvel did not invent these dynamics, it plugged them into a modern generator, proving that tales of divine lineage, fallen heroes, and world-ending threats are a language we never stopped speaking. Then there is the quiet, pervasive power of the Force in Star Wars. It surrounds us and penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together. This is not a new idea. It is a sleek, sci-fi rendering of concepts that are ancient and universal. It is the Tao, the flowing, fundamental principle of the universe in Chinese philosophy. It is the prana or kai, the vital life force in Hindu and Chinese traditions. It has a light side and a dark side, a balance much like the opposing yet complementary forces of yin and yang. The Jedi, with their serene detachment and commitment to peace, echo the ideals of Buddhist monks or Stoic sages. The Force gives a scientific-sounding name to the oldest intuition of all, that the universe is not dead matter, but a living, conscious field of energy, and that our moral choices resonate within it. We recognize its truth instantly because our stories have whispered of it for millennia. Frank Herbert's monumental Dune takes this integration even deeper, weaving cosmic destiny into the very fabric of its universe. The saga of Paul Atreides is a deliberate, intricate messianic prophecy. He is the Kwisatz Haderach, the one who can be many places at once, a superbeing whose arrival has been meticulously engineered by the secretive Bene Gesserit sisterhood over generations. His journey mirrors the archetype of the reluctant savior, the boy who must become a god to lead his people to freedom, echoing everything from the legends of King Arthur to the awaited Mahdi in Islamic tradition. The barren desert planet of Arrakis itself becomes a character, a harsh, spiritual testing ground where the cosmic and the political are inseparable. Water, the ultimate symbol of life, is the most precious substance in the universe, and its control dictates the fate of empires, a stark, ecological twist on the ancient quest for the elixir of life. Dune shows us that even in a future of interstellar travel and genetic manipulation, the most compelling stories are still about prophecy, sacrifice, and humanity's fraught relationship with absolute power. From Thor's hammer to Luke's lightsaber, from the Bene Gesserit's breeding program to the Jedi Council's wisdom, the patterns are unmistakable. The hero still answers a call to adventure, often guided by a wise mentor like Obi-Wan Kenobi or Dr. Strange's Ancient One. They still seek a symbolic ultimate weapon, whether it is the Infinity Stones or the One Ring. They still face a cosmic battle between a rigid, often corrupt order and the terrifying freedom of chaos. These are not lazy tropes, they are our cultural DNA. They resonate because they are fundamental. They are the shapes into which we pour our deepest questions about power, responsibility, identity, and our place in the cosmos. Every time we watch a superhero land on screen or a farm boy stare at a binary sunset, we are not escaping our world. We are participating in the oldest ritual we have, using new gods and new galaxies to tell the same eternal stories about what it means to be alive in a vast and mysterious universe. Even with satellites and supercomputers, certain stones refuse to fit into our tidy historical walls. The most persistent mysteries are not the stories themselves, but the hard, physical details that seem to whisper of lost chapters in the human story. Take the architecture. We can explain how ancient people moved multi-ton stones with ramps and levers, but the why behind the precision often leaves us breathless. The Great Pyramid of Giza is not just big, it is a geodetic marker. Its base perimeter, divided by twice its height, gives a figure astonishingly close to pi. Its sides are aligned to the 4 cardinal points with an error of less than a fraction of a degree, a feat requiring knowledge we struggle to replicate without modern instruments. At the Temple of Karnak, the axis of the main sanctuary is aligned so that on the winter solstice, the rising sun shines directly down its entire length, illuminating the Holy of Holies. These are not happy accidents. They are deliberate, encoded acts of cosmic conversation, a language of stone speaking to the sky that we can measure, but whose full vocabulary we may have forgotten. Then there is the eerie synchronicity of stories. The global flood myth is the classic example, but it is far from alone. Why do cultures from the Maya to the Norse to the Chinese all have legends of a world tree or axis, a central pillar connecting heaven, earth, and the underworld? Why do dragon or serpent myths, representing chaos and primordial power, appear from Mesoamerica to Mesopotamia? These cultures, separated by impassable oceans and millennia, had no way to share these narratives. The conventional explanation is Jungian archetypes, that the human mind, facing similar fundamental questions about life, death, and the cosmos, independently generates similar symbolic answers. This is compelling, but it does not entirely dispel the chill of recognition. It suggests that our collective unconscious may be a deeper, more shared well than we ever realized, or it points to some common, forgotten experience in our deep past that was interpreted in shockingly similar ways across the globe. Perhaps the most specific and debated puzzle remains the Dogon and Sirius. Setting aside the controversial ancient astronaut interpretation, the core anomaly is unsettling. How did an isolated tribe in Mali come to describe Sirius B, a white dwarf star invisible without a powerful telescope, as small, incredibly heavy, and moving in a 50-year elliptical orbit around its brighter companion? The mainstream rebuttal is cultural contamination, that missionaries or anthropologists in the late 19th or early 20th century, aware of the then recent astronomical discovery, inadvertently introduced the knowledge, which was then absorbed into existing Dogon cosmology. Yet, proponents counter that the Dogon rituals and artifacts referencing this knowledge appear older, woven into the fabric of their tradition in a way that suggests deeper roots. This mystery may never be fully settled. It stands as a testament to the fragility of oral history and the immense difficulty of proving where a piece of knowledge truly began. It forces us to ask, how do we, with our written records and digital archives, truly know what was known long before the first library was built? These unresolved threads are not failures of science, but its essential fuel. They are the loose ends that keep the story alive, the quiet hum of possibility in the silent gaps of our understanding. They remind us that history is not a solved puzzle, but a conversation we are still having with the past. Every unexplained alignment, every shared myth without a clear vector, every anachronistic detail is a question mark etched in time, an invitation to look again, to wonder more deeply, and to remain humble before the vast and intricate tapestry of human experience. The greatest legend of all may be the unfinished one we are still living, the ongoing quest to understand the astonishing world our ancestors tried to describe in the only language they had, the language of the divine cosmos. The mysteries of the past are not locked away in dusty tomes. They are written in the night sky above you, a living library you can visit any clear evening. That profound sense of cosmic connection our ancestors felt is not a relic. It is an invitation still open to each of us. You can begin by simply learning the constellations and the stories they hold. When you trace the belt of Orion, you are not just connecting 3 stars. You are pointing to the hunter pursued by the Pleiades, a narrative told from Greece to Australia. Free apps can guide your phone to the sky, overlaying these ancient figures over the modern stars, transforming random points of light into a familiar cast of characters. This simple act bridges millennia, letting you see the heavens through the eyes of a Sumerian priest or a Norse storyteller, finding the same heroes and monsters they did. It turns stargazing from observation into participation, a direct link to the oldest stories we have. For a more tangible connection, seek out the places where myth was literally set in stone. Visiting an ancient astronomical site, like the solstice alignment at Stonehenge or the sun dagger at Chaco Canyon, is a powerful experience. Standing in those spaces, you are not just a tourist. You are standing in a cosmic observatory and a temple simultaneously. You can witness the precise moment the sun aligns with a carved spiral or a massive trilithon, exactly as the builders intended thousands of years ago. In that alignment, you feel the intention, the meticulous observation, and the sacred awe that drove them to move mountains of stone. It makes the legend physical. You are not just hearing about a culture that worshipped the sun. You are seeing the calendar they built to honor its journey, proving their knowledge was not abstract, but etched into the landscape itself. The stories themselves are also waiting for you in their original, unfiltered forms. Reading primary mythological texts, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Popol Vuh, or the hymns to Shiva as Nataraja, is a direct conversation with the ancient mind. You encounter the raw imagery, the fears, and the wonders without modern interpretation. You see how they described the flood, not as a historical footnote, but as a roaring, divine wrath. You feel the philosophical depth in the description of a dancing god whose rhythm sustains the universe. These texts are not always easy reading, but they are the source code of our collective imagination. They reveal the poetic logic behind the legends, showing how our ancestors used the most powerful language they had to describe a cosmos that overwhelmed them with its beauty and terror. Finally, you can practice your own form of modern cosmic storytelling. Amateur astronomy, or astrophotography, is the contemporary equivalent of charting the stars for myth and meaning. Training a telescope on the rings of Saturn or the craters of the Moon delivers a jolt of pure awe. Capturing the faint swirl of a distant galaxy with a camera connects you to a scale that humbles daily worries. This is not just a hobby, it is a ritual of perspective. When you track the International Space Station crossing the twilight sky, you are watching a new kind of celestial chariot, a human-made star fulfilling our ancient dream of traveling the heavens. These practices reaffirm that the drive to look up and wonder is not dead. It has simply found new tools. The night sky remains the same vast canvas, and we are still the creatures trying to find our picture within it. The grand story continues, and your curiosity is the next line in the script. Our journey through 30 astonishing legends ends not with an answer, but with a deeper, more resonant question hanging in the starlit air. From a cosmic egg to a dancing god, from sunken continents to wandering stars, we have traced the contours of humanity's oldest and most profound storybook. Every culture, in every corner of our world, has lifted its eyes to the same dark expanse and woven its fears, its hopes, and its genius into the constellations. These tales were never mere entertainment. They were our first science, our first philosophy, our first attempt to build a shelter of meaning under an infinite sky. They gave names to the terrifying and faces to the divine, transforming a silent void into a populated, purposeful cosmos. We created gods who fought in heaven and heroes who sailed on floods not to escape reality, but to engage with it at the most fundamental level. These legends are the collective dream of our species, a dream written in fire, water, stone, and starlight. They tell us less about aliens or lost technologies and more about the timeless architecture of the human heart, its capacity for awe, its terror of chaos, and its stubborn, beautiful insistence on finding a pattern in the dark. That pattern, whether called the axis mundi, the Tao, or the Force, always points toward connection, a sense that we are not random accidents, but threads in a vast, living tapestry. So the work of these stories is never truly finished. The same sky that watched over Babylon and Tenochtitlan still arches above us. The same stars that guided Polynesian navigators and Dogon priests still shine tonight. When you step outside and look up, you are not just seeing points of light. You are looking at the original canvas. That band of milky haze is the backbone of the night, the spilled flower of a Cherokee grandmother, the heavenly river of the Chinese. The red eye of Taurus is the monster slain by Marduk, or the watchful gaze of a giant bison. The steady North Star is the unmoving nail of the cosmic axis, the pivot around which the great wheel turns. You are gazing at the same mystery that has captivated every human who ever lived, and in that shared gaze, across the centuries, lies the true magic. These legends remind us that our quest for understanding is our greatest inheritance. We no longer blame eclipses on celestial dragons, but we still send probes to touch the sun. We no longer search for the fountain of youth, but we peer into our own DNA, seeking the secrets of aging. The language has changed from myth to mathematics, from prophecy to physics, but the longing remains the same, to know our place in the grand scheme. The 30 legends we have explored are not relics to be left in the past. They are invitations to keep looking up with the same wonder, to keep telling new stories about the black holes and dark matter that challenge our modern minds. They assure us that our urge to map the unknown, to find the center, to seek the beginning, is not a phase of childhood, but the defining pulse of a conscious species reaching for the stars. So the next time you find yourself under a clear, dark sky, take a moment. Let your eyes adjust to the depth. Remember the cosmic egg, the world tree, the thunderbird, the phoenix. Feel the weight of all those stories, all those dreams, layered in the silence between the stars. You are part of that continuity. You are living the next chapter of the human epic, under the same ancient, divine cosmos. The legends are not over. They are simply waiting for you to add your own wonder to the sky. If these mysteries of the heavens captivated you, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest enigmas. Your support helps us continue exploring the shadows and starlight of our shared past. Let us know in the comments which cosmic legend fascinated you the most. Are you Team Atlantis, convinced a golden age sleeps beneath the waves, or does the Phoenix's fiery cycle of rebirth speak more deeply to you? Perhaps the silent, watchful journey of the wandering Jew, or the precise, impossible knowledge of the Dogon stars, left you with more questions than answers. Share your thoughts and your own local star myths. Every culture has them, and your story might be the piece of a puzzle we haven't yet heard. Remember, the greatest mystery isn't just out there in the cosmos. It's the endless human capacity to wonder, to imagine, and to seek our place among the stars. That drive is the true thread connecting every legend we've explored, from the first storyteller gazing at the Pleiades to you, watching this now. Thanks for watching, and keep looking up.